Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. Thanks so much for being here. Our website is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content. On this week's show, we have Congressmember Ro Khanna. Now, last time he was on, I remember we sparred a little bit about the Ukraine proxy war, about sanctions on Syria, but it's a new era. We're living in the era of Israeli genocide, the moral issue of our time. And Ro Khanna has been on the front lines of fighting AIPAC. And so I say, let's let bygones be bygones. Whatever disagreements we have with Ro, let's put them aside. And I honor the stance he's taking in taking on the Israel lobby and taking on the Israel genocide. I also honor the fact that I think he's the only Democratic member of Congress willing to speak to podcasts that are to his left, to the left of the Democratic Party. So I give him a lot of credit for that. And we'll be speaking to him this week.
Thank you, Ro, for stopping by. And thank you, Ro, it is true, for actually speaking to people who don't always agree with you. Well, the world would be a better place if more politicians were like that.
All right, well, let's get to our four basic food groups. I have Democrats suck. And speaking of speaking to Democratic politicians, I once spoke to Senator Chris Coons on a train going from New York to D.C., and this was just about a month into the genocide. And I asked him why he was opposing calls for a ceasefire, and we had a interesting exchange that ended with him getting me kicked off the train. But anyway, now let's check out on Senator Chris Coons. What is his stance? Well, recently he voted against a measure from Bernie Sanders to block weapons to Israel. And how does he square that with the fact that he acknowledges that Israel is blocking humanitarian aid into Gaza? And under U.S. law, if you're doing that, then you cannot be receiving U.S. weapons. So has Senator Coons changed his stance? Let's check in. He was interviewed by PBS.
You called it urgent that Israel allow more humanitarian aid in.
Yes.
In July, you voted against a measure to halt the sale of $675 million of weaponry to Israel. Is that vote in tension with your call for humanitarian aid?
My public statements then and now are demanding that Israel allow humanitarian aid in. Their explanation is that Hamas is stealing or diverting most or all of the aid that's been let in. And I'll tell you, I believe Jose Andres and World Central Kitchen, Cindy McCain and the World Food Program, and a dozen other leaders of organizations from UNICEF to UNHCR who've told me that, tragically, this is too often the IDF either targeting humanitarian relief efforts or preventing them from getting in.
That wasn't the question, Senator Coons. The question was, is your belief that Israel is blocking humanitarian aid, which of course they are, is that in tension with your continued votes to send weapons to Israel? And of course, He doesn't answer the question. So he's going to be asked the question again.
This is a real crisis, and it is hurting Israel's legitimacy and support in the United States and around the world.
The reason I ask if it's in tension is that several of your colleagues who align themselves more along this is sort of the moderate flank of the Democratic Party, actually voted to stop sending those weapons to Israel because of the humanitarian crisis. There is a new Gallup poll which has only 32% of Americans approving of Israel's military action in Gaza. But among Democrats, that number stands at 8%. Do Democrats need a fundamental mindset change when it comes to how they think about the relationship with Israel after this war?
Bluntly, I think we need a fundamental mindset change in our relationship with Netanyahu and his leadership. I am not going to walk away from Israel and the ideal of a Jewish democracy in the state.
Note again, he doesn't answer the question about, like, if you believe that Israel is blocking humanitarian aid, why are you still voting to arm Israel? He doesn't answer that. And then he says, okay, fine, yeah, let's change our relationship with Netanyahu. Netanyahu, as if Netanyahu is the problem, even though his entire opposition supports everything he's doing inside of Gaza, because he says we need to believe in the ideal of a Jewish democracy, which of course is an oxymoron. Either you're a democracy for everybody or you're a democracy for nobody. And the ideal of a Jewish democracy means you're only a democracy for Jews, which means you're not a democracy.
But also, like, even if, let's just say, for argument's sake, the problem is Netanyahu. Now, Aaron, you just explained, and you and I know that that's not the case, that this is a societal problem, that the vast majority of Israelis think that Netanyahu is using either sufficient force or not enough force, and it's an extreme minority that thinks he's using too much force, that still doesn't explain why you would vote to keep funding them. Netanyahu is the prime minister right now. What does that have to do with the existence of a Jewish state?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the bottom line is Netanyahu's brand is so bad because he's, knowingly sacrificing his own captives just to fulfill the goal of destroying Gaza. So Coons has to throw in a line of, oh yeah, Netanyahu's the problem. When really the problem is people like Chris Coons willing to arm Israel no matter what it's doing and no matter who's in power.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost amazing because his answers are, both of his answers are actually indictments of himself. Like, they're both reasons why he should not be voting the way he's voting. He doesn't even know how to make his point effectively. All he's doing is making himself look like a bigger hypocrite.
Yeah, that's a very democratic thing to do. Like, I remember with the Ukraine proxy war, when a bunch of progressives got on board, they were like, people like Cory Bush and Bernie Sanders would be like, yeah, we have to be mindful of militarism and NATO expansion, but let's go ahead and give tens of billions of dollars over to the cause of militarism, NATO expansion.
Yeah.
So doing something similar here.
Isn't that Dems? Yeah. We're excited to share today's sponsor, American Giant. Today's trends of fast fashion have complicated clothing production by shipping cheap parts around the world to whomever can sew them at the lowest cost. And now you're paying the price with rising costs. Back in the 1960s, 95% of clothing Americans bought were made in the USA. Today, it's only 3%. That's why we're excited to share our sponsor, American Giant. American Giant focuses on keeping things simple and close to home. They aren't affected by tariffs because their products never left the US. But it isn't just about prices and helping the world. American Giant's clothes are comfortable too. From their famous hoodie to jackets, dresses, tees, and more, American Giant has a style and a feel that you're sure to be happy with for years to come. Support American-made, tariff-free clothing with American Giant. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code USEFUL at American-Giant.com. That's 20% off when you use code USEFUL at American-Giant.com. Well, for Republicans suck, as I'm sure every single person in the world knows by now, there was a very shocking assassination of Charlie Kirk, the far-right influencer, media star, head of Turning Point USA. He was shot in the neck in Utah while he was giving a Q&A. And it is, I don't know if you saw the video. I actually was trying not to see it. It was on Instagram. I found it incredibly disturbing. I'm not someone who likes Charlie Kirk at all, but it was really violent and awful to see. So how are Republicans, including Trump and several media figures on the right, responding to this? Are they calling for less violence? Are they calling for more cooperation and understanding? No, they're basically calling for war and blaming the radical left for all of the political violence in this country. Let's take a look at what Donald Trump had to say.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it.
Okay, so here he is saying that rhetoric is dangerous and we have to stop demonizing each other. And then he goes on to demonize the entire left, the radical left. And also something you'll note is that he talks about going after all of the organizations that fund this. So that I'm sure is going to be, as he already has been going after, and as the Republicans and some Democrats have already been going after, Students for Justice in Palestine. We know that Jewish Voice for Peace is considered a terrorist organization by some, including the ADL. So I'm sure he's going to be going after political organizations, maybe the DSA. We'll have to wait and see. But it's especially rich given what he's about to say in this next segment. So let's keep playing.
Radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God.
Okay, so maybe the God part, but when it comes to free speech, as we've pointed out on the show many, many, many times, Trump is not exactly an activist and champion for free speech as much as he and J.D. Vance pretend to be. I mean, the crackdown on people who are criticizing Israel, the crackdown on pro-Palestine speech, the kidnapping of people who engage in pro-Palestine speech is all an attack on free speech. It's all part of a censorship campaign. So again, this is a kind of the perfect amalgamation of rank hypocrisy from Donald Trump, and he's pretending that he's something that he isn't. He is demonizing others while he's condemning the demonization of others, and it's just a perfect Trumpism. But I also want to point out that, a lot of people, including the people we're about to hear from, are framing political violence as kind of something that the left has a monopoly on. There's no mention of the fact that recently there were 2 Democratic lawmakers were killed in Minnesota by someone who was a Trump supporter. Obviously, there was an attempted assassination of Pennsylvania Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro. There was a series of shootings at the homes of 4 Democratic elected officials in New Mexico. And these are just the recent attacks. Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked. They were trying to attack Nancy Pelosi. People want to hang Mike Pence, et cetera. So this is obviously extremely selective. But let's take a look at some of the media figures and what they had to say. So first, we're going to hear from Alex Jones, then Steve Bannon, and then Jesse Waters.
We're in a war. The left has been saying put a bullseye on Trump, a bullseye on his supporters.
Charlie Kirk's a casualty of war. We're in this country. We are.
They are at war with us. Whether we want to accept it or not, they are at war with us. And what are we going to do about it?
Response to political violence is calls for war or calls for fighting back. But obviously, these are very provocative calls. Last but not least, let's hear the really moving words of Republican Congressman of Missouri, Bob Onder.
Well, what for us? Well, everything has changed. If we didn't know it already, there is no longer any middle ground. Some of the American left are undoubtedly well-meaning people, but their ideology is pure evil. They hate the good, the truth, and the beautiful, and embrace the evil, the false, and the ugly. And they literally will kill those with whom they disagree, just as their predecessor leftists, Marx and Stalin and Lenin and Pol Pot and Fidel Castro did. We must know that.
I love how he throws in all the historic bad guys that the U.S. Doesn't like to connect that to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But right. If you're going to go to history, I think of the quote from Dr. King that the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet. And when you're the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet, that's going to reflect itself in your own culture. And it's a very violent culture here. And that's not exclusive to any faction. If this assassination of Charlie Kirk came from someone on the left, then that's deplorable.
Yeah.
But it would be just as deplorable when someone on the right does it. And unfortunately, rather than recognize it, every human life is valuable and that no one deserves to be killed for their political views. Every time this happens, one side just takes advantage and demonizes the other. And it's especially rich coming from the Trump camp, which paints everyone as an enemy, right, and has the kind of rhetoric that we're seeing right there that does demonize people.
Right.
And it's just, I don't know, this is a real, Charlie Kirk, I didn't agree with a single thing I ever heard him say, but of course, this is something everybody should oppose. This is political violence. I just wish, though, that principle that we oppose political violence could be applied to everybody equally. And if it did, then you wouldn't have people cheering on mass murder in Gaza every single day.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's just not where we're at.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also speaking kind of beyond morality, it's, if this is someone on the left, it's an extremely stupid thing to do and to have done because they just handed the right a martyr. Now, I don't know. For all I know, it could be an agent provocateur from the right pretending to be someone on the left.
Well, who knows? Who knows? We'll find out if they catch the assassin, and it's just horrible. And it just, to me, it just speaks to a grim trajectory that this country feels like it's on. But to me, it all starts with the culture itself. Not only that, promotes violence with the proliferation of guns and the lack of regulation of firearms, but also just the violence it exports around the world.
Right. Yeah. Violence, which, ironically, Charlie Kirk was A-okay with as someone who defended Israel. Although he was starting to suggest that Israel, some people are thinking that this is because he turned against Israel, but we'll have to look into that on another episode.
Yeah, I strongly urge everyone to refrain from speculation until you get actual facts.
Right.
I think that's the best course of action always. Okay, let's turn to Isn't That Weird? And check in on Jerry Seinfeld. He has some new insights to share about the movement for Palestinian rights. This is what he said. Via The Hollywood Reporter, Jerry Seinfeld compared the Free Palestine movement to the KKK. And Jerry said, just say you don't like Jews. By saying Free Palestine, you're not admitting what you really think. So it's actually, compared to the Ku Klux Klan, I'm actually thinking the Klan is actually a little better here because they can come right out and say, we don't like blacks. We don't like Jews. Okay, that's honest. So Jerry Seinfeld is offended by people saying Free Palestine because how dare people say that Palestinians deserve to live in freedom like everybody else, to the point where he's willing to say that the Klan is actually a little bit better because at least the Klan, according to Jerry Seinfeld, is a little bit more honest than people who say Free Palestine, which somehow in his mind is a call to kill Jews and really just a call to free Palestinians. I don't understand why that's a hard concept to grasp. So anyway, my response to this was to invoke an old line from Seinfeld. If you watch the show, you might remember the line, these pretzels are making me thirsty. That's a line that Kramer had to say when he got a bit role in a Woody Allen film. So I said, in my best Jerry Seinfeld voice, these Palestinians are making me racist. That's my response to Jerry.
The irony here is, first of all, I do want to give a special shout out, and this is so embarrassing, but I do want to give a special shout out to Van Jones, who compared wearing a keffiyeh to holding the Confederate flag. So shout out to Van Jones, this person who claims to be on the left. But, what's so rich about what Jerry Seinfeld does and what every single Zionist who claims that the chant Free Palestine is anti-Semitic, there's this weird English Zionist who says it's akin to seeing a swastika. All they're doing is creating anti-Semitism, because what would make you angrier at Jews than the claim that Free Palestine is anti-Semitic? Like, it's the worst PR for Jews. Obviously, it's a terrible thing to say in general, but it's just so embarrassing, which is why Jews have to speak out and condemn that. Just for Jewish safety. I hate to use that word, but it's true. Like, if the world thinks that all Jews are supporting this live stream genocide, and if the world thinks that all Jews think the cry for Free Palestine is anti-Semitic or KKK-like, we're screwed.
Well, luckily, not everybody in the Seinfeld universe agrees with Jerry on this. A few weeks ago, we interviewed Larry Charles, who was one of the original writers and producers on Seinfeld, and he strongly disagrees with Jerry Seinfeld and spoke about the challenges of working with people like Jerry, who are a big part of Larry Charles' career, who have such abhorrent views. So check out that interview at usefulidiotspodcast.com. All right, what do we have for Isn't That Terrible?
So for Isn't That Terrible, let's hear what Ambassador Mike Huckabee, who we spoke about in Thursday Throwdown, and you should definitely check that out because he's written some very impressive books. Let's hear what he had to say about Israel and Gaza in an interview with the not exactly hard-hitting Richard Engel.
We've got to keep the focus on where it is. There is moral clarity in this conflict. It's not confused. It's not a gray area. Hamas savagely massacred 1,200 people on October the 7th, all civilians. And they didn't just kill them. They massacred them. They butchered them. And they did it in front of their families. They raped mothers in front of their children. They mutilated their bodies in front of their children. They beheaded babies and put old people in wheelchairs on fire. We got to remember what started this. And President Trump.
It's an unbelievable statement. He says in that very short clip, he says 5 things that are false, starting with the fact he says that everyone killed on October 7th was civilian. That's not true. There were a few hundred soldiers and security forces killed on October 7th because they were the targets of the attack. Because again, they were taking part in the occupation of the Gaza concentration camp.
Right.
And that happened on October 7th. And also, not everybody was even killed by Palestinian militants, because we know, because Israel enacted the Hannibal Directive, that Israel at least killed some of the victims of October 7th. So that right there is a lot. And then he gets to the rape thing. So not only now was there rape on October 7th, according to Mike Huckabee, and again, as we've exhaustively talked about, there still is no evidence for even a single case of rape on October 7th, let alone on a mass scale. But then he says that there's rape of mothers in front of their children. That's a new lie we haven't heard before. And then he also throws in the beheaded babies thing. And Richard Engel,
That's an oldie. But the new one, I had never heard the people in wheelchairs set on fire before.
That's a new one too.
Yeah.
That's
so shout out. He is a prolific writer, so maybe he can write some more historic fiction about what happened on October 7th, given that he is going even beyond the greatest hits, which we've already heard. And let's see, is Richard Engel going to push back on these documented lies? Let's see how he reacts.
Very clear in reminding us, whatever he says about this conflict, he always says, don't forget October 7th. And it's something I feel like that the world needs to not just hear, they need to heed that. Don't forget what happened. Don't forget what precipitated this. And don't forget what has prolonged it.
I was here at the time. I went to many of these kibbutzes. We've interviewed many families. We've certainly focused on the atrocities of October 7th.
He says that he was at the kibbutzim, where these crimes occurred. He basically is co-signing, right? By not pushing back on what Huckabee is saying, he's suggesting that he saw that stuff, right? I mean, there's kind of an implicit embrace of his analysis and his observations, because it's worse than just moving forward with another question. It's worse than just going to the next thing. And yeah, good. I'm glad he's about to say something about how, there's been violence against Palestinians. But by not pushing back on that, and by saying that he was there, it's actually worse, because it implies that he's right.
He knows that everything that Mike Huckabee just told him is false, because he was even there on the ground. And of course, when he was on the ground, he didn't pick up any evidence to substantiate Mike Huckabee's claims, or else Richard Engel would have reported it, right? If he had picked up evidence of beheaded babies or rapes in front of mothers, he would report it, but he didn't. So he knows that everything Mike Huckabee is saying is a lie. And instead of telling him that, he says, well, yes, I did focus on the atrocity. So he's trying to suck up to Mike Huckabee, even though he knows Mike Huckabee is lying through his teeth. I mean, and Richard Engel is like the chief foreign correspondent for NBC News. And this is what it takes to be in that position. You have to be willing to just sit there and let someone lie through their teeth to justify a genocide, which is exactly what Mike Huckabee is doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. And just imagine someone making unfounded claims and baseless claims, but who was pro-Palestine instead of pro-Israel. Do you think the media would just stand there and be like, yeah, it wouldn't happen? And also this whole idea about how we have to remember where this started and when this started, that's literally all anyone ever talks about in the media and all of our political elites. That's always where it goes back to. It's as if history starts on October 7th. So this idea, the suggestion that that's not already part of the discourse is so ridiculous.
Well, we can expect such blatant propaganda from Mike Huckabee. He is, after all, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, which means he basically works for Israel. But Richard Engel, you're supposed to be somewhat of a journalist. So come on, really, the terrible here goes to you. Mike Huckabee's doing his job. A journalist is supposed to have a little bit more dignity.
Right.
Be a little bit less of a sycophant to Israel. But Rich Engel was not here. So terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah. And those have been your 4 basic food groups. We are so excited to be speaking to, once again, Congressman Ro Khanna, who represents California's 17th District.
Now, a few notes. We recorded this before the assassination of Charlie Kirk, so that issue is not addressed. Now, to get ahead of people who might say, hey, why aren't you challenging Ro Khanna? He's a Democrat. He's in Congress. He has all these views that, a staunch leftist doesn't agree with. Well, we don't really do debates on the show unless it's really, really urgent. And to me, right now, you have the moral issue of our time, which is the genocide in Gaza. And Ro Khanna has been pushing back on AIPAC. He's been calling it out. And I think in times like this, you have to prioritize certain issues. And so personally, I'm prioritizing the genocide in Gaza. And so, yes, I might disagree with Ro Khanna on many things, including, say, the proxy war in Ukraine. I just think it's a time for the focus to be on the moral issue of our time. So this is a very cordial interview with Ro Khanna, who, by the way, is one of the few members of Congress willing even to speak to people to his left, which I think is very admirable and worth acknowledging him for. We also get into his efforts to shine light on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. He's been joining up with Thomas Massie to call for the release of the Epstein Files. And we talk about that and more. So here is Ro Khanna.
Welcome back to Useful Idiots.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You've been spearheading an effort to get Trump to recognize Palestinian statehood. Can you tell us more about this effort and any new developments around it?
Coincidentally, I just spoke at the Council of Foreign Relations this morning. We have 26 signatures to officially recognize a Palestinian state. Now, people say, is this just moral preening? Why does it matter? What is the importance of it? First of all, it obviously matters to Netanyahu, and it matters to AIPAC because they have been very opposed to it. So there is a real value in recognizing the humanity of the Palestinian people and their national aspirations. Secondly, the Palestinians need some hope, a horizon of hope to overcome the destruction and extremism that they are seeing. And third, the reality is that the United States recognizing a Palestinian state, unlike all the other countries, really matters because we have the ability to have consequences based on our aid and our support.
You mentioned that you have 26 signatures. So when you bring this pitch to your colleagues in Congress, what kind of pushback are you getting? What are you hearing from people about why they're not on board with this yet, even though it's supposed to be U.S. policy to support a Palestinian state in just 22% of their homeland?
You know, it's so funny because one of the critiques I got at the Council of Foreign Relations this morning was, what are you saying that's new? Isn't this what we've always been trying to do, which is a Palestinian state, recognizing a secure Israel and two states with the Palestinian free and fair elections, 22 Arab states involved. And that's why it shouldn't be that controversial. But the reality is when you have the United States actually do it, it is setting a marker that says if Israel is not then committed to actually taking steps to recognizing a Palestinian state, then there are going to be consequences and consequences for the relationship. And that is a red line for certainly AIPAC. It's a red line for Bibi. And so members of Congress have been reluctant to get on. 26 is quite a lot and shows that we're building momentum. It probably would have gotten a few years ago. But I think that whether you agree with me or not on two states and recognizing a Palestinian state, it's meaningless if we're not willing to recognize it. Actually recognizing it gives teeth to what the United States policy has been.
The experience of Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush were basically ousted from Congress by AIPAC, spending more than $20 million around there to get them out of Congress because they supported Palestinian rights. How much of an impact do you think that's had on measures like yours to trying to get just minimal recognition of Palestinian rights?
It's had a chilling effect, but there's been a counter force since my friend Jamal Bowman lost and since Cori Bush lost. And that counter force is that the famine that's going on in Gaza has really shaken people. And I would say the support that Israel has is dramatically changed in the last 2 months of this year. And so there are more people now getting on Delia Ramirez's bill to stop giving military weapons to Israel and Netanyahu that are being used to kill civilians. 27 senators supported Senator Sanders. None of that would have happened a year ago when Jamal, me, and 37 Democrats voted against the $14 billion supplemental to Israel. But it is still a fear because people know they see AIPAC on X attacking me every week. I'm part of a group with Chris Van Hollen and Mark Pocan and Bernie Sanders that they tag. And they know that they have a financial clout. And so it creates a chilling effect. Really, you should have, in my view, 150 members of Congress on this. But people feel also that they could just duck. Okay, if we maybe we're not going to go out there and do a full throttle defense of Israel anymore, or speak at an AIPAC conference, but we don't have to go out and support Delia Ramirez's bill or Sanders or Khanna's letter. Let's just dock it when the war is done, then we can emerge. And that, I think, is unfortunately a prevailing sentiment among a fair amount of elected officials on our side.
I have a question about this letter that you have written. It says, according to The Guardian, that the U.S. will, quote, need to fully recognize Israel and adopt a framework to guarantee Israel's security, including the disarmament of and relinquishing of power by Hamas, in order to be broadly embraced by the community of nations. So isn't that already the case? And what are you guys going to demand about security guarantees for Palestinians? And is there any guarantee that they get the right to choose their own government as Israel does? And, since that seems required for self-determination.
Yes, we call for free and fair elections in Palestine. The provision of them recognizing Israel and a secure Israel is the provision that the Palestinian Authority has agreed to. It's a provision, of course, that France and Canada and Australia and many of the 147 nations have called for. It's the framework towards peace. So it would be that we would expect Israel to recognize a Palestinian state, to stop the settlements, to stop the bombing, to work with the United States and the Arab partners to allow for free and fair elections and to have a Palestinian state, and that both sides would face consequences if they violated international law or human rights or violated the sovereignty of those states.
In speaking to your colleagues, is there a recognition of what the polls are showing, that the base of the party is now completely against Israel, just appalled at what it's done to the people of Gaza? And how is that tension playing out? The tension between where the donors are, including AIPAC, versus where the voters are?
There is a recognition of dwindling support. You have less people, like I said, who are vociferous in their advocacy for Israel. There would be people who would come up to me on the floor, we would, their own arguments about it. Aren't we more secure today, Ro? There's no Nasrallah, there's no Sinwar, Iran's been bombed. Now less people are willing. In fact, one of my colleagues, I was going to say, hey, I'm surprised you haven't criticized my letter privately. And he said, well, right now I'm not in a mood to be defending what Israel's doing. So they definitely have seen the shift, and many are aware of it. And it's led to a silencing of pro-Israel advocacy. But what it has not done is gotten many to start to speak out for human rights of Gaza, for a Palestinian state, for stopping the bombs going there that are killing civilians. And many are just hoping that they don't have to speak anything about it. So they're not out there promoting Israel, but they're also not willing to criticize them because they know that there is going to be a huge response. I mean, I think there was something, AIPAC Tracker does an analysis of different prominent Democrats, and I think of the various ones who were being floated around for different national roles. AOC and I were the only two that they said we're not taking or significantly intertwined with AIPAC, and they said, well, we hope that kind of continues to be even more progressive on the issue. But think about that, and so a lot of folks have just said, okay, maybe we can be silent.
You have worked in the past, and you currently are working with Congressman Thomas Massie, and he's referred to AIPAC babysitters, saying that each member of Congress has an AIPAC babysitter. Have you had this experience with AIPAC attempting to babysit you?
I respect Thomas Massie a lot. I'll tell you what it is. I mean, AIPAC has a person in every district that has outreaches to their member of Congress, as do other groups. And I still take a meeting with constituents from AIPAC. I mean, I will take a meeting with anyone. I don't take their money, and I don't take PAC money, and they criticize me. But, I'm going to the Arab Con in Dearborn, and they're criticizing me for doing that. And I have been a staunch supporter of free speech and dialogue. But the problem, I don't have a problem with them having a person in every district saying, come meet constituents in your district. That's the First Amendment political participation. I have a problem with the super PAC money that targets members of Congress, and I have a problem with their philosophical position, which is whatever Israel does, we're going to support. And our view is you don't have agreements publicly, disagreements publicly, you only disagree privately. I just disagree with that.
In July, you and Congressman Thomas Massie introduced the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a bill that has received bipartisan support. Can you tell us more about the bill, what it aims to do, and what its status is right now?
Well, we had good news today, our 217th signature on the bill to release the full Epstein files, and we expect to get to 218 on September 23rd when we have Representative Grijalva's seat filled. The bill says release the files. It's what the survivors want. I mean, we had a press conference. The survivors were so emotional. They talked about being assaulted, raped at the age of 13, 14, about having to recruit other high school students to be abused by rich and powerful men. And these rich and powerful men have never had accountability. The Epstein file release will help bring accountability. It will say that there can't be two systems of justice in America. You can't say that, okay, if you're rich and if you have political context, you get to, with impunity, abuse young girls.
What's your understanding of what's actually in the Epstein files in terms of like the types of documents that we're talking about? Are we talking about client lists? Are we talking about ties to foreign intelligence? There's been all these theories bandied about, but it seems unclear what the Epstein files actually are.
Well, having talked to Bradley Edwards, who's seen the files, he's the victim's lawyers, what he says is that there's no client list, but there's a lot of witness memoranda and interviews which suggest that there were people Epstein farmed out these underage girls too, and that there are other people who were engaged in this horrific conduct. And there's also evidence of other people, powerful people, rich people who knew what Epstein was doing and turned a blind eye. There's evidence he believes of financial crimes, of money laundering, of financial transactions. And he keeps saying that we need to get the files from the CIA. So that leads me to believe that there is some foreign angle, foreign intelligence angle, but he's not specified beyond that.
Speaking of what's in the files and the revelations, I want to show a picture of Trump's birthday letter to Jeffrey Epstein, which was originally reported on by the Wall Street Journal. Can you talk about the recent release of this letter, as well as others that were obtained through the Epstein estate itself? And what do you think its significance is?
Well, I led the effort to get this letter after appearing on Lawrence O'Donnell's show. He had Bradley Edwards, who suggested that we should be getting this birthday book from the estate. The big significance to me, other than the awful crudeness in a mirror of American culture, that of the degradation of women, the big reflection to me is that we just can't trust the White House to tell the truth, that they're still denying that this was a document that he had anything to do with. And this means that we should have a full release of the Epstein files. Look, if there's nothing there, if, as the president says, it's all a Democratic hoax or Democratic exaggeration, then why not just release the files? That would answer the question, and people can determine for themselves if there's something there. The fact that they're not willing to release the files is what's raising all these flags about what is going on.
And you've been attacked over this. For instance, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had some choice words for you in response to a question from Maggie Haberman. Let's take a listen.
Thank you. I want to follow up on something you said. You said the Epstein documents are a hoax that Democrats are perpetrating against the president. You've said he didn't sign that check, that he didn't sign the birthday card that he allegedly signed. So what is the theory, since these documents came from the Epstein estate? Who is, I guess, in your view, faking these documents?
I did not say the documents are a hoax. I said the entire narrative surrounding Jeffrey Epstein right now that is absorbing many of the liberal cable channels on television is a hoax that is being perpetuated by opportunistic Democrats like Ro Khanna and the others whom you saw on that press conference outside of Capitol Hill, who are trying to push this hoax against the President of the United States.
What exactly is the hoax? I'm just trying to understand what's fake. What's fake is not the documents.
The hoax hoax is the Democrats pretending to care about victims of crime when they do not care about victims of crime, when they have done nothing to solve crimes, when they have done nothing to lock up child pedophiles and child rapists across the country, and when they are now using victims as political props to try and, again, smear the president of the United States and drag on this bad story about him. It is a distraction. The Democrats view this story as nothing more than an attempt to distract from the accomplishments and the achievements of this administration. And that is what we mean when we call it a hoax.
So what's your response to that, Mr.
I'm
Opportunist?
used to being attacked. I just think it's unfortunate that she's diminishing the survivors. I mean, the survivors were not anti-Trump. Some of them voted for Trump. They wanted to meet with him. They want him to release the files. It's Donald Trump that's made this a Trump issue. If he just releases the files, this issue would go away, and he could take credit for releasing the files. So it's unfortunate to see that them being so defensive.
Do you think that the Democrats have learned any takeaways from their latest loss in the presidential elections? And what for you are those takeaways?
And to hear the rest of the interview, please go to usefulidiots.podcast.com.
That was great. Always love talking to Ro. And make sure that if you are not already a member, you become a member at usefulidiots.podcast.com so you can hear the full interview with Ro, where he expands on his thoughts on Jeffrey Epstein and gets into also what is happening to Medicare and Medicaid.
That's our show. Thanks so much for tuning into Useful Idiots. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to and watching Useful Idiots. For extended episodes, bonus content, and our weekly Thursday Throwdown episode, please subscribe at usefulidiots.podcast.com. Support the show for free by subscribing on YouTube, Rumble, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to rate and review. You can also follow us on Twitter at UsefulIdiotPod. Thanks for supporting independent media. We'll see you next time.